went ice skating a few weeks ago, and I went with a family that invited me, and they have some young children. And their youngest two are 5 and 3 years old, and they had never skated before. And we were at a pond and not a rink with, kind of those sideboards that can help you out a little bit. And the 3-year-old, he had those double-bladed skates to help him. And the 5-year-old, she had the kind of single blades. And I noticed that they had like really puffy coats on, they had snow pants on, and it wasn't one of those days that was super cold. It was actually kind of one of the few mild days that we've had recently. And I looked to their mom, my friend, and she goes, "You'll see, it's not for warmth, it's for padding." And it only took me a few minutes to figure out, because they had no idea how to be on skates, of course, because it was their first time. So, they tried to kind of walk on the ice in their skates, which really just makes you go horizontal on the ice. And that's why they needed all that stuff to catch them when they fell. And they were getting really frustrated, right? Because they keep trying and they're just falling down and getting back up, and their parents are just saying, "Don't walk, glide. Don't walk, glide." And they're thinking, like, I don't know how to glide. So they keep walking. And my husband was with us, and he learned to skate at a young age, and he got an idea. And he went into the lodge, and he got one of those kind of metal folding chairs with the rubber feet on the bottom. And he gave it to the 5-year-old, and she started to push it as she skated. And she was learning how to skate as she did that. And she was thrilled with this assistance, until her little brother then saw, kind of the advantage she was having, and he decided that he wanted to turn with the chair. And she didn't want to give it up, but after her parents' strong encouragement, she gave it to her little brother, and he also had some success once he was using the chair. And the best part was that she was able to skate a little better once she lost the chair. And I think we're all learning something new every day. And we're gonna fall. Sometimes we're gonna go horizontal on the ice. And sometimes we're gonna get a chair to lean on, to help us, to guide us. And then other times we're gonna have to let go of that chair and continue to skate. And that's evolution. And I think that's why we're here. To evolve and to grow and to deepen into who we really are and what we can do together in this place. So welcome to our celebration of life this morning. It's great to be together again. And I hope you'll rise in body or in spirit and join us in our first hymn, number 347.
This is a sermon in 2 parts in some ways. It bridges that sermon theme we had of character in January to evolution. And I did the first part of the sermon at our partner church at First Unitarian, and I can give you a snapshot of what that was about. Basically, it's the idea that we all think that empathy and compassion come from working on our better character traits. Except, come to find out, that's not true. The best example of looking at that is people who rescued Jews from the Third Reich when he came through. And if you look at all of their character traits, there is nothing in common. There often are people who are thieves and murderers and cheats that are part of that. So it's not their character. The one determining factor that makes sure whether or not somebody lives into empathy and compassion with another person is whether or not they were close in proximity to them. The closer their proximity is, the more likely they are to bring about empathy and compassion. So that being true, proximity matters, right, in compassion. And this week I wanted to dive into that a little deeper, because now I'm thinking it's more complicated than just saying work on your proximity to people with suffering. And I've had this story in my head all week, and I'm trying to make sense of it, and I've realized it's not just proximity, come to find out. It also matters how you process that firsthand experience. Or maybe even more importantly, It matters what you bring to the encounter of proximity. What stories or background or faith guide you in that relationship. So the story I've had in my head all week is about Alexander Yevnik. It's told in I.L. Press's book, Beautiful Souls. Alexander is a player in the violence that took place, kind of the mess that all happened in the 1990s. If you will remember, Yugoslavia was a country that housed both Croats and Serbs. The Croats wanted independence from Yugoslavia, and the Serbs didn't want them basically to have it. Now, the story that I want to share with you comes from the city of Vukovac. And Vukovac is a city that had this enormous battle in it. And the easiest way to explain it is the Croats had control over the city. For 19 days, they fought with the Serbs, and in the end, the Serbs had control over the city. And what the Serbs did were gather all the Croatian men in the town, and they brought them to a detention center. Now, the only problem with that is that because this surge came on the city so quickly, that there were a number of Serbian men that got gathered up with this Croatian men as they're being brought to this detention center. And as they get there, there's some other pieces with all of this. After World War II, it's good to remember that Serbs and Croats lived together. They talk alike, they look alike. It's almost impossible for them even to tell the difference between the two of them. So when they get to this detention center, and these Serbs are kind of meting out punishment to the Croats there, they also realize they have to figure out who are the Serbs amongst them to take them out and have them kind of be free. Are you following me? All right, good. What happens is the Serbs basically have to find a Serb who is from Vukovar to be able to find the ones that are all together. And the dilemma was solved actually when one of the officers realizes he fought in the army beforehand with Alexander Yevnik. And he finds Yevnik in the crowd. And he calls him forward and he says, I have a job for you. Basically, I want you to find all the Serbs from Vukovar and pull them out and put them in this room so that we can let everybody go free. And he tells Yevnik, he says, choose carefully. So Yevnik starts going around and he's pulling Serbs that he knows from Vukovar. But then he walks up to a few people and he kicks their feet and he says, come with me, Kovacevic. He told one detainee. Now, the guy's a little confused because his name is not Kovacevic. His name is Stanko, and he's a Croat, not a Serb. Come with me, Yevnik says. So the guy stands up and he goes with Yevnik. And all the other Croats are kind of bewildered about what's going on because Yevnik keeps walking up to Croats and kicking them and calling them by a traditional Serbian name and asks them to stand and come with him. And in the end, he has all these Croats kind of that are saying, please pick me, pick me. Okay, hurry up. And they fill up a room that was supposed to be only for Serbs. But now it has all these Croats in it as well. And Yevnik did not stop until the entire room was so packed with people they couldn't get anybody else in there. What's so interesting about that story, it seems to me, it's all about proximity, right? I.L. Press, though, himself is very baffled over Yevnik's response to picking out Croats he knew from the community. Alexander put himself at great risk. And why is that? Because if it is true that any guards had asked those Croats what their name was, who they were related to, Yevnik would have been called out as a traitor. So the question really is, why, when Yevnik had every reason to see the world as a place to fear, why did he do this act of benevolence to the enemy? Turns out, all comes down to Alexander's mama. And doesn't it often come down to your mama? Apparently, Alexander's mother's parents had been in a concentration camp during World War II called Jasenovac. Jasenovac was run by the Croatians who were trying to get rid of the Serbs. This is like an ongoing battle forever and ever. But during World War II, according to the Serbs, the Croats killed 700,000 Serbs. According to the Croats, 40,000 Serbs were murdered. It doesn't really matter what the number is. It was brutal and violent and a terrible thing to have happen. So when Alexander is asking his mother about this, his mother always told this story like this. His mother stressed something else, not the violence. But she said most Croats were good people and that it was wrong to hate. Now, Alexander admitted when he was a little kid, and he'd have this response, like he heard that answer and it didn't really work for him, and he'd say to his mother, yes, but Croats murdered your parents. How are these people good? How is that possible? And his mother would say to him, the people who did that were not Croats. They were animals, not humans. Only animals can kill people. Not Croats, Serbs, or Muslims. Only animals can do that. Animals have no nation. An animal is an animal. Now, Alexander says that after hearing that over and over again, it finally sunk in. Alexander told press, I'm not defiant. My behavior has to do with the way in which I was raised by my parents, and they taught me to love people. Press points out that his mother actually did one more step in order to make that come about. And his mother did so by refusing to tell the storyline of Croats being monsters. His mother did not bequeath to her son the aggrieved sense of victimhood her story certainly could have warranted. In other words, she took the fear out of the story and implanted love into the story instead. Love. You know what? That is so not what Western philosophers have used as the best way to discern what guides moral conduct. The rationalists of the Enlightenment believed that the key to acting ethically was remaining dispassionate and thinking your way into good behavior. Immanuel Kant, who's a famous philosopher and theologian, always said, have courage to use your own reason. But you know what? It's not actually right. Indeed, neuroscientists today, who study the inner workings of the brain, have come to believe that it is emotions that inform our moral judgments and enable us to care for people. They cite the phenomenon that when a person is watching direct experience with suffering, and they have them in an MRI machine, right, so they can watch their neural firings. When they are watching suffering, it's not the rational part of their brain that fires up. It is the emotional side of their brain that gets all hot and bothered. That's one way, I guess, you could say that about an MRI, hot and bothered. What I found most interesting about all of this is Dilep Jest, who's a psychiatrist who has done all this great work about how kind of the neural correlates of wisdom and empathy. He's commenting on what that neural firing does. This is what he says. When we say we are measuring empathy, it's a lab condition. Whether it translates into something in real life, we don't know. The brain is actually an inert organ, which is why assessing its qualities is not like measuring somebody's weight or height. One of the biggest advances in brain research is the demonstration of neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can change not only in function, but structurally as well. And when we say someone is hardwired, we often give too much credit to our genes, but actually the expression of genes is more under our control than we think. The brain is not like steel. It's like plastic, and it is affected by environment and culture and experience. That's so cool! Are you alive with me this morning? I mean, come on! The brain is plastic and is shaped with environment, culture, and upbringing. It would make sense then that the stories that we are told, the stories that hold us and help heal other people, they matter, right? They really matter. That said, it seems to me that we as human beings often have this fight going on in our head. We have a part of us that holds things like anger and betrayal and resent and frustration. We have this other part of us that holds things like kindness and compassion and empathy, all of those wonderful good things. And the question is, which one wins out? Which one wins out? The one that wins out is the one that we feed. The one that wins out is the one that we feed. Yevchik's brain was fed with love. So it does indeed matter what you feed. I have to say, this story gave me hope, like great hope. I was kind of like doing this little dance. It's true that we can meld our actions to reshape our brain so we are more kind and more empathetic, more versed towards love. Then why the heck aren't we doing it all the time? Why aren't we feeding our brain with the good? Seriously, there's a great kind of awakening and awareness to that by sinking into neuroplasticity. The expressions of genes is more under our control than we think, which means all these years, I have not been a complete idiot. On occasion. Solveig, my 16-year-old, has been having this year of existential angst. It happens a lot. She has a lot of anxiety about it. Like, why are we here? What does it matter? What's any about this about? And she gets all worked up. And once I said to her, you know what? I think we're here to evolve. I said, as Unitarian Universalists, you are part of a living tradition. A tradition that believes that each of us are responsible for evolving not only ourselves, but for other people into more justice, more empathy, more kindness. So the hope is that the world is better when we die than when we first got here on the planet. That we are a part of a little bit of changing of that evolution. And we evolve by loving fiercely, by being open to life without fear, and by getting into our thick skulls that actually we are meant to serve one another in compassion and connection. Indeed, I have always thought that we really should be called the religion of evolution. We are constantly taking new ideas and new thought and new science and new experiences and putting them in front of us to live into the best of what the human race has to offer one another and the planet. We are the religion of evolution. So that thought struck me the other day, and I'm on this little high, and I'm really proud of my insight, and I'm like doing this little dance in my kitchen. I'm getting all excited about this. Oh, that's so cool, Kaaren, you figured it out. And I'm thinking about neuroplasticity and thinking about how cool that always is, that we can change our brain, and then stopped dancing. If it is true that we can reshape our brains, that's pretty amazing, right? But getting good at anything, I mean anything, takes a lot of practice. Which means we need habits of love. We need a practice of gratitude. We need a discipline of empathy. And in the end, proximity matters. It matters a great deal that we make a habit out of it, that we show up with love in our eyes and our hearts so we can be open to whatever that proximity has to teach us and what we can learn from it. But that's actually why my little dance stopped. Because we are a living tradition. We are a tradition of evolution, but we are not a tradition of discipline or practice. We leave that up to the Eastern traditions to actually do. We leave it up to faithful monks at evening vespers. We leave it up to Jews who walk to the Sabbath in honor of the day and their own practice. We leave it up to Muslims who spend time kind of getting in touch with the holy both at sunrise and sunset. Discipline to a practice of love with proximity feels like something we can kind of yearn for, yet don't really know how to achieve. We don't have any practice or habit or discipline to get there. We don't. I actually think I know how to get there, though. And I want you to hang with me because it's kind of a wild story. But all of us can do it. All of us. Every day. About a month ago, I met a member of our church here at First Unitarian, and we were driving down here for our Soul Matters group, and the weather was terrible. It was like snowing really hard, and she was going to follow me from First Unitarian down to about Bushnell Basin. You all know where I'm talking about, right? She was going to leave her car there, and we were going to drive down here together. So I get in my car, she gets in her car, we start driving, and we're on the way down here, and the snow is really coming down, and there are people kind of inching along on the street, and they're swerving when they take a curve, they're moving from lane to lane, and I am thinking in my head, wow, this must feel kind of dangerous for her, because I knew that she had been in a car accident where she had spun out numerous times. She was lucky not to have died, and she was lucky to walk away. Right? So I'm thinking the whole way down, like, I hope she's okay, I hope fear doesn't happen to her. So it took us about 20 minutes longer to get down to Bushnell Basin than normal. She parks her car, she gets out, she gets in my car, I turn on her heat warmer for her, and we start driving down to Canandaigua. She says to me when she gets in, as I'm pulling out of the piece, she says to me, I just had the best experience of driving with the snow coming down and the light and the people in slow motion, and I'm following someone who I love, who gives value to my life. Me. And I start looking out at all the cars around me and thinking to myself, I don't know that person, but they could be one more person to love. Yeah, they could, right? One more person to love. So I just smiled at each car and sent them love. I totally admit this. I frankly looked at her and thought, who are you? But holy God, you know what? She meant it. It wasn't fake. And I thought how transcendent to have that kind of opening in yourself, that you could even think that there are people endlessly to love. Like you have this space inside of you that your heart can take on love over and over and over again, and it will never fill up. It will never reject another, never be too squished or reticent to open. And it was such a beautiful image. So when I got back that night, I got in my car, I started taking her idea and I turned it on myself. Maybe that should be my practice every time I get in my car, and I can think to each passerby, or maybe that person is one more person to love. And though she doesn't look like Jesus, I'm pretty sure I just got a good lesson from a mystical traveler, one who can help all of us work on our neuroplasticity to grow towards empathy and love and connection, to reshape our brains, to evolve each day with the turn of the key, and as you move that steering wheel around and glide out into the road, remind yourself that the world is full of people ready to be loved. Ready to be loved. And you are just like my Canandaigua Jesus, a person with a heart so flexible and expandable that you are always capable of taking on that exchange. You always are. Your heart knows that there is no end, but you have to practice that deep love. And you have to remind your heart of its noble truth and help your brain evolve. May it be so. Amen.
No place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone. I can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't be running from the rain when I'm gone. And I can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Can't say who's to praise and who's to blame when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone. The evenings and the mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. All my days won't be dances of delight. The sands will be shifting from my sight. Can't add my name into the fight. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. No place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.